We used to recognize parenthood as based on a biological connection or an adoption. Those are the only two legitimate paths to parenthood. The Uniform Parentage Act, and also this bill in Massachusetts, says actually, if you intend to parent the child, you can get the baby. No screening, no background checks, no necessary connection through biology. It simply is, if you have the money to put together sperm, egg, and womb, you can walk out of the hospital with a child who's not genetically related to you. Maybe you're a felon, maybe you're a pedophile, doesn't matter to us. You intend to parent the child.
All right. Lots going on for a nice quiet Tuesday in June. Let me tell you what I want to get to today, because I've got a really interesting conversation that I'm going to tee up for you in just a second. The White House, you've seen this video from the fundraiser in LA where Obama's pulling off stage. I'm going to break that down in just a minute. Plus, I want to talk to you. Biden's now pulling 500,000 people onto the potential voter rolls, people that are in the country illegally, giving them a pathway to citizenship. And then they're spending $50 million against Trump on a brand new ad. As I said all along, and I'll talk to you about this, calling him a convicted felon. I knew this would happen. This has been the plan all along, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second. Plus, it's primary day in Virginia and Oklahoma. Not huge races, but I'll tell you why in a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you about one of the good guys, Leo Grillo. You know, if you've been watching the show, I've rescued 3 dogs, and I really admire the work of Leo Grillo and what he has done at Delta Rescue. And if you go to deltarescue.org, you can check out the videos. They speak for themselves. The work that Leo has done is phenomenal. He has created a no-kill sanctuary. If you watch this show a lot, you know that Leo schooled me, told me the difference between a shelter and a sanctuary. A sanctuary, no kill. It's a beautiful thing what he has created out there. These horses, dogs, cats, you name it, can roam and run freely. They get the veterinary care they need, the nutritional care they need. But because of the donations of people like me and you, it allows that work to sustain itself. So go to deltarescue.org, check out the videos, see the work. You'll fall in love with it. Trust me, if you're an animal lover. And see if you can make a contribution, $100, $1,000, whatever it is. But then more importantly, the work that Leo has done, he wants, and I want for him to make this an enduring mission. I want it to go on for decades and generation. Download the estate planning kit. And as you're sitting there, think about that. If I'm an animal lover, what can I do to support something like this after I'm gone? Make Delta Rescue part of your estate planning. So hit the kit, check it out, deltarescue.org. All right. As I said, let me just cut through the easy stuff first. It is primary day in Virginia and Oklahoma. 2 big races. Well, technically in Virginia, I live in Northern Virginia, so there's a Senate race. 5 candidates running. We'll see who emerges from that to take on Tim Kaine. The president endorsed Hung Hao, former retired Navy captain. We'll see tomorrow. But the big race is in the 5th congressional district, where John McGuire, he's on the show a couple days ago, former Navy SEAL. He's current state senator, taking on House Freedom Caucus Chairman Bob Good. The president and everybody is going in all for Good. We'll see. For McGuire. We will see if that was enough today. Bob Good trying to pull some other members in for him, but a lot of momentum for John McGuire. Trump did a teletown hall last night, a big rally for him, saying that that Bob Good stabbed him in the back, obviously, metaphorically. We'll see that. And then in Oklahoma, Tom Cole, who's the new appropriations chairman, is having a tough primary. Now, here's the thing that's funny about this. Back in the day when I got into politics, if you're the appropriations chairman, your district loved you. You were the guy bringing home the bacon. See how much things have changed? That's now a liability. You don't want to be the guy bringing home the Washington bacon anymore. You want to be the guy that's fighting it. Anyway, we'll break down both of this tomorrow, but primary day. All right, let me kind of tell you about this video, and I want to play it for you in case you haven't seen it. President's at a fundraiser in LA. Jimmy Kimmel from ABC, who's out hosting the second debate, and all these other people are there. Let me play you for this is the White House approved version of the video, because they've been saying that conservatives have doing a cheap fake, not a deep fake, because it's not fake, but they think that it's been edited or selectively manipulated. So let's look at it. Let's look at the approved version. This is the one that they say is okay. Let's play it. Okay, there they are. Okay. Oh, there's Biden. He looks like Biden. And then there's Obama next to him. And there's the moment. He's just hanging out on stage, right? Okay. And this is where it gets a little concerning for the folks on the left. Biden clearly, Obama's like Biden, look at him. This is the approved version, guys, not the edited, cheap, fake, whatever they want to call it. This is their version that's cool to show, right? But what's happening? Okay, now Obama kind of guides him off stage. Okay, Joe, here we go. Okay, Joe, yeah, here we go. Look, let's stop and think about this for a second. A few years ago, it was the Steele dossier, 2016. That was fake. Then the laptop, that was Russian misinformation. That was a lie. And now they're trying to say that these videos that we see are cheap fakes. You see a pattern here? Every time we see something that could potentially change the outcome of the election, the media and the left get together and discredit it. Steele dossier, that's totally legit. Here's what Trump did, despite the fact that the evidence didn't support it. The fact that Hillary Clinton paid a fine to the Federal Election Commission after the fact. Then it was the laptop. That's fake. That's Russian disinformation. 51 intelligence officials say so. Oh, except when the DOJ says it's real in Hunter Biden's case. Well, now we know that's a lie. Here we go again. Cheap fakes. We don't like a video. It's a cheap fake. What was cheap about that? That was, if they have a problem, it's with Obama. Not with us, not with folks on the right, not with the RNC. That's them. That's their problem. All right. I want to tell you what else is happening today because I cannot believe this. This is why I always say to you guys, words matter. And I want to tell you about this because this is important. The two things that are happening. The Biden campaign announced that they're going to spend $50 million on an ad targeting Trump. I want to show you this ad, or at least some of it. But this is exactly what I said was going to happen. Why words matter. Let's play the video if we can.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies,
there we go,
found liable for sexual assault, and he committed financial fraud. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering healthcare costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. This election is between a convicted criminal who's
there we go, convicted. You get it? It's all about the talking point. They don't have a policy to run on. They don't have a record. It's convicted felon. I told you this was going to happen, but it's beyond that. It's the words. Okay. So today, Biden I'll read you the headline. Biden to take sweeping election year action, shielding estimated 550,000 from deportation. Shielding them as if they need protection. They're vulnerable. They're victims. These are people in this country illegally, right? And it keeps saying, this is how Axios described it. Obtaining legal status after marrying a U.S. citizen is a long and cumbersome process that require people who enter the U.S. without authorization. Without authorization. No. When I steal something, I didn't take your stuff without authorization. I stole it. If I come into your house without permission, that's trespassing. That's breaking and entering. That's not without authorization. It's always about the words. Do you know what I'm saying? Look at how the left does this with everything. It's always about the words that they use to favor the left and discredit the right. Election denier, convicted felon. Everybody's that on the right. What are their sides? Think about this. Over that Hollywood video that I showed you, right? What had happened? Trump was at Turning Point USA, and they called it a far-right, crazy organization. Biden was with A-list celebrities. Well, first of all, they weren't A-list. Mark Hamill, the last thing he was in was Star Wars. It was like 1972. So let's be honest. But beyond that, this idea of A-listers, like, so you woke up the next morning, that's what you heard on the news, right? Biden gathered with A-list celebrities. That sounds like a nice group of people. A-list celebrities? I'd like to go party with A-list celebrities. I don't want to go to a far-right gathering where Trump was at. But you see how they brand everything like that? That's what I'm talking about. Everything gets branded these days. Convicted felon, unauthorized entry. What do you mean unauthorized? Without authorization. It's all devil in the detail. This is the first step in 500,000 people being able to vote. They're moving them on a pathway to citizenship. What do you get when you get to become a citizen? The right to vote. This is happening right under our noses. And the way the media frames it does it in a way that makes sure that you are okay with it, that the masses are okay with it. If you're not paying attention, imagine that someone comes home. Think about this for a second. Hey, our house got broken into. Oh my God, what happened? We called the police. What are the police doing it? As opposed to somebody came into our house without authorization. Without authorization? Who was it? The neighbor? The nanny? What? Without authorization? That doesn't sound very bad. Someone broke into my house. Wow, that's bad. The media is intentionally distorting what's happening every single day in all these various issues. I'm going to continue to tell you about this because if we don't see it, that's their goal, is just to put it into the ether, pretend that we don't know about it. All right, we're going to have a really interesting yet intense discussion today about an issue that's going to be critical in this election. Before that, though, I want to tell you about another critical thing going on in the world. I've told you this before. The Democrats gave tens of millions of dollars. No, it's actually more than that. I think it's like $1 billion to the IRS. And what did the IRS do? They hired tens of thousands of IRS agents, like 50 to 80,000 of them. What are those people doing? They're sending out 5 million notices to Americans just like me and you. So if you owe taxes or you didn't file maybe during the pandemic, maybe you owe 10,000, maybe you owe 10 million, maybe it's personal, maybe it's a business. The IRS is coming and you're going to get a notice in the mail, maybe a call, maybe a knock on your door. Do not engage with the IRS unless you have representation. I think the smart people on this issue is Tax Network USA. If you go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, you will get the help you need. These folks have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. They have the expertise and the know-how to do what's right for you. Whether it's 10,000, 10 million, personal business, whatever, they got it. They will help you out. Go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer or call 1-800-245-6000 and tell them I sent you. But trust me, the IRS is not your friend. They will upend your life. You want to have the expertise of the folks from Tax Network on your side. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All right, folks, we are about, as I've told you before, the Democrats have nothing to run on. It's all going to be about Roe v. Wade protecting IVF. The pro-life community on the right is split about how to do this. We've seen it. And if we don't get our act together and understand what's at stake, we're going to lose. They've put massive amounts of ballot initiatives in key states, Florida, Nevada, because they get it. This is what energizes the left and some independents and frankly, some people on the right. The issue of IVF is one that you saw every Republican run for cover the second that Alabama court said that it was outlawed, right? Because they were saying that there was an issue in whether or not the parents had a right to those fertilized eggs that the clinic was trying to discard. It's a big issue. It's controversial. It's tough to get through. But I want to explain to you in a way that you understand what's at stake. And I want your feedback because this is a big issue that we as a movement and as a party need to deal with and tackle. So there is a woman who has been at the forefront of this issue, Katy Faust. She has written books on children. Them Before Us is the foundation that she has, the group that she founded. She's written several books, Raising Conservative Kids in Woke Cities. There's a new bill out in Massachusetts that's changing the definition of a parent to say that it's a non-gender specific thing. We're talking about rules to surrogacy and IVF. And I want Katie to break down what these issues are and why it matters. And then I want your feedback in the comment sections to tell me what you think. So watch this interview, go on to YouTube, Rumble, go to SeanSpicer.com and tell me what you think. All right, let's bring in Katie and kick off the conversation. Katie, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure. Good to be with you.
You know, it's funny. This Alabama ruling that the court came out with, whatever it has been now, a couple months ago, about IVF. Every Republican ran, it seems like, to say, no, we've got to protect IVF. We've got to show that we're somehow pro-life. Mm-hmm. You sort of have had issues with a lot of these folks, Britt in Alabama specifically, Ted Cruz saying that's not really a pro-life move, right?
It's not a pro-life move. Unfortunately, the reality is that the baby-making industry of big fertility victimizes more children every year than the baby-taking industry of abortion. If you really believe that children have a right to life from the moment of conception, then what we're seeing, especially through IVF, is the victimization of children on a mass scale. You know, contrary to what Senator Cruz and Senator Britt believe, you can't really be pro-life and protect IVF. You might be individually pro-life and try to pursue IVF in a way that does not violate any child's right to life or right to their mother and father. But the industry itself is built upon the victimization of tiny humans. So their doctors, will confess that the reason why their industry operates the way that it does is because they create many more embryos than they ever intend to implant. They routinely employ genetic screening, sex selection, determining which embryos to implant based on hair color, eye color. And the reality is that about 10% of the kids created in a lab will be given the chance at life, will be transferred. And then, of course, just a fraction of those are going to actually make it through the entire process alive. So unfortunately, if you really believe that life begins at conception, you need to oppose IVF in almost all cases.
But that's not the narrative, is it? I mean, meaning I think that for most people, they hear IVF and they hear, oh, I'm being pro-life because I'm conceiving a child, just not maybe through the most natural means.
Well, that's the problem is that you can say, well, this is pro-life or pro-child or pro-family. But what do you mean by that? Is it pro-life for the 93 to 97% of the children who don't make it through the process alive? Is it pro-family for the kids that lose their mother or father through the process because IVF enables the use of donor gametes? No, it's not. Just because a child is born in some cases doesn't mean that the industry itself is pro-family, pro-child, or pro-life. Unfortunately, it's exactly the opposite.
So when you say the child, are you talking about the fact that because, as you mentioned, that they harvest X number of eggs and that the discarded ones are lives? Are you sort of maintaining the principle that life begins at conception and therefore if you have all of these and you're discarding them, those are then discarded lives?
Just to be clear, harvesting eggs and harvesting sperm is not something that I would say is a children's rights issue. I could say it leads to possibly bad decisions. But life begins at conception. It's when the sperm and the egg come together that a distinct human being is created, a brand new genetic code that's never been seen before, what will develop into fingerprints that has never existed and will never exist again. That is the point at which we need to say, this is now a sacred human that deserves protection. So it is the combination of the sperm and egg in the petri dish. That's what IVF is, in vitro fertilization that takes place in glass. That is the moment where we need to say, okay, now this is a human being with human rights that deserves protection. And what IVF does is they create multiple children. I mean, most fertility clinics will advise you to make as many children as possible in glass, in vitro, so that you can then determine which embryos are the most fit, right? They'll allow them to develop for 3 to 5 days and then see which one makes the grade. They have a grading system for these little lives, grade A, B, C, D. The ones that don't make the grade or are just surplus are going to be donated to research. They will be thawed and discarded. They will be put into a freezer and many of them never emerge again. The children that are created and survive, some of them are going to be separated from their biological mother or biological father. And we've got enough stories of kids created through sperm and egg donation to know that these kids suffer with higher rates of household instability, identity struggles, and many of them long to know the identity of their biological parent because that's critical to identity formation.
So is there a difference between a donor, if there are two parents who are having trouble conceiving and they say, we want to go down the route of IVF, then you do know both of the parents, you do know the DNA. Are there any distinctions, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask, between the process that you're describing, whether if it was like a donor versus two parents who are married or two people who are married and are then going to be the parents of this child?
Well, the process isn't different. You're going to combine some egg and some sperm in a petri dish. Of course, the difference to the child is immense because they deserve, long for, and have a right to be known and loved by both their mother and father. And it's only in tragic cases where we would then say we are going to sever the child from the biological mother and father and reattach them to biological strangers as in adoption. So when you're talking about third-party reproduction, it is always a violation of children's rights. Can a heterosexual married mother and father use IVF in a way that does not violate children's right to life or right to their mother and father? It's possible, but it's so cost prohibitive. Hardly anybody does it. And
Why? What do you mean by that?
what I mean is, what would that look like? That would look like a husband and wife creating only the number of embryos they intend to immediately implant, one or two, not genetically screening any of them, not sex selecting any of them, not determining which ones they want to implant based on fitness, implanting every child that they create as soon as they are created. And the truth is that with IVF cycles costing between $15,000 and $30,000, most couples don't have the money to do that. Better to create an entire batch of embryos and have, 8 to 10 in frozen storage for later use. So you can simply pay for the transfer fee, not the creation of more embryos. So the truth is that Big Fertility is going to advise you against that more child-centric pro-life approach. And most couples don't have the money to afford it anyway.
But it's possible. So it's not, I just want to make sure that I'm being clear that if a married couple said, we're having trouble conceiving, we want to go down the IVF route, and we're bringing in X number of eggs to this process, fertilized eggs, as long as we intend to use all of them, that would be consistent with pro-life orthodoxy, correct?
I think the challenge is you can say that you intend to use all of them in terms of we've got 10 viable embryos. We're going to implant 2. We're going to freeze 8. I've talked to, thousands of couples across the country. Do you know how many people who are devoutly pro-life, who have frozen embryos that they don't know what to do with? Because that's what I mean. When you put them in the freezer, very often they don't come out. Even if you intended to and wanted to implant all of them. You implanted 2, the first 2 took, and now you've got twins. You don't have the mental, emotional, physical space to implant the others. And then by the time you do, your kids are 5 and 6 years old. Now you're a 52-year-old woman, and the thought of transferring 8 more embryos, well, that's really challenging. And so what these couples do very often is agonize over the fully genetic siblings of the children sitting at their breakfast table, snacking and going, what do I do? I can't thaw and discard them. I can't donate them to research. Could I adopt them out? I could, but that means that somebody else that I don't know is going to be raising my genetic children. Maybe they'll look more like me than the kids that are in my home now. And of course, those children are going to long to know their biological parents because that's what human children want. They're curious about, they long to know, they desire to be loved by their mom and dad.
So what do you say to the person that says, I'm a married couple that's having trouble conceiving? What are my options?
Your options are do what you can to resolve your underlying fertility issues rather than simply allowing your doctor to shuffle you into the IVF pipeline. The reality is there's natural procreative technologies, NAPRO technologies, that actually identify and resolve the underlying infertility issues so that you can have a baby yourself. And that is they often have higher success rates than IVF. And so what is it that we do? So here, let's just scoot back and say, what do we do when adults want something very, very often, something that is noble and good? We long to be parents, maybe long to get married, maybe long to have a family, but adult longing, loss, suffering, and desire do not violate the victimization of children. And the reality is, we have been saying this in the pro-life world for decades. When there is an unplanned pregnancy, we say, we will walk with you, we will empathize with you, but no amount of your fear or concern justifies victimizing a child's right to life. We now need to say that to our own voting demographics and say, no amount of your longing, hopes, and dreams for a family justifies you victimizing children, either their right to life or their right to their mother and father. In both of these situations, the answer is for adults to do hard things, because the only alternative is for children to do hard things. And that is a thought process that results in injustice.
So let me ask you about the big pro-life groups, Susan B. Anthony, Right to Life. Where do they come down on this?
Well, I would say that a couple of years ago, not a lot of them were talking about it. And I was even on with Abby Johnson a couple of years ago, and we were talking about IVF, and she received a lot of blowback for that. But now most of the, I think, very credible pro-life organizations are talking about IVF. Live Action is, Seth Gruber is, Students for Life is, I'm going to go to Texas Right for Life next week, and they want me to talk about how big fertility and abortion are two sides of the same child commodifying coin. And so I do think that pro-lifers are waking up and recognizing that if we really believe that children have a right to life from the moment of conception, big fertility is the second front on this war to defend their rights.
So let's get into the politics of this. We're in an election year. Mm-hmm. The Democrats and the left are talking about Roe v. Wade as like basically their number one, number two, and number three issue. Is this something that you think is politically tenable?
No, it's not. It's not a political winner. Sorry. Sometimes that's what principals do.
That's great. I mean, not great. Yeah. It's not great that it's not a winner, but I think that there's a question sometimes about winning issues and principled issues, right?
That's right. This is right. And the truth is that when you do some education, especially people that are seriously pro-life will get it. I've been doing this for about 5 years. I will tell you what, like people used to just stagger. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? But now when we share, when we post, when we critique the, IVF Protection Act that Senator Cruz and Senator Britt, it's our followers who are like, no, you cannot victimize children, even if it goes against the people that are politically your supporters and your advocates. So I have seen major movement on this, especially among pro-life groups. Is it a winning political issue? It's not. But that just means that we need more leadership, not more capitulation. I mean, are we going to do this or not? Are we actually going to defend kids, or are we going to just win elections? I mean, and I want to win elections. I want to win elections because children's rights are on the line, but we don't victimize children so that we can defend children in the future.
Right. And I think I get your point. I just want to play devil's advocate for a second. If the Democrats, truly it is the devil here. If we don't have any power in government, we know what the left's agenda is, and the pendulum will swing completely the other way. So is there an argument to say, I get what you're saying, but if we get wiped out politically, we're screwed?
I guess I just don't know exactly tactically what we're up to here because, we've got the Protect IVF Act that was virtually indistinguishable from the Democrats' Protect IVF Access Act. I mean, when you're starting to adopt the left's talking points, when you're starting to mirror not just their priorities, but their language, I think that you've got a problem here. I mean, is that really something that you want to concede so that you can win elections? I mean, to me, that's the old adage of conservatives are just, progressives in a slower gear, going slower. Right. No, you know what? It is time to be principled, and people love clarity and courage. Why can't the GOP offer that?
Okay, so you mentioned clarity, right? I'm a couple, or I'm a person. I'm half of a couple. I'm married several years. I'm getting along in my 30s, right? And I want to start a family. We talk about IVF. I bump into you. You tell me that that's not a great thing. Your argument resonates with me. What are these holistic and alternative methods to get over fertility that you're talking about?
Well, if you want to look at the medical route, NAPRO technologies. That's the first place to start because very often there is a problem either with the husband or the wife or both that can be resolved, that can be healed. And I know several couples who have gone that route, started IVF, didn't work, went to NAPRO technologies, and now they've got a household full of
What does that mean? I've never heard the term. Explain what that means.
What I mean is very often there is a problem with your body that is preventing you from pregnancy. Your body is actually made to procreate. And a lot of the times, conventional doctors do not do the work of actually diagnosing what is going on. Is it low sperm count? Is it endometriosis? Is it a problem with releasing the egg? And what can we do about that? Sometimes it's a matter of just understanding your body and how it works better. And so education is involved, some seeking to target the area that needs to be healed so that your body can conceive naturally. Now, of course, IVF doctors do not want this because it would prevent you from being a repeat customer. So first of all, medically, pursue everything that you can to heal your body. There are dozens of different reasons why people struggle to get pregnant. And I'm talking about people that are in childbearing age. If you are, ladies, unfortunately, in your 40s, you may have missed the window. Your body was made to have children in your 20s and 30s. And I'll tell you, we can start by not lying to young women about the prime time to get married and have children. So many women are in this situation because they believe the leftist lie that career was more important and they can have children later. They can't. Your body is made to have babies in your 20s and 30s. But if you're in that childbearing window, go to a specialist and really diagnose your infertility problems.
Okay, but let me just throw something at you. I mean, because I know at some point you've also written extensively about the importance of two-parent families. I'm a young woman. Let's just say that there's a young woman in her 20s and 30s. She has bought into this career path issue that you just brought up. She gets to be in her 30s. So are you saying, hey, sorry, you missed the window, you're out of luck?
Yeah, what I am saying, Sean, great questions, by the way, is at some point, every adult, single, married, gay, straight, fertile, and infertile, will have to make a choice. The choice is, who does the hard thing? Do I do the hard thing by sacrificing what I want when I want, the way that I want it? Or does the kid do the hard thing by losing their right to life, or losing their right to their mother and father, or losing their stable, intact, married parent home because we're going through a struggling divorce? This children's rights world, where they have rights that deserve to be respected and protected by the only people powerful enough to do so, adults, means that every adult at some point is going to have to say, I'm going to put them before us. I'm going to put the child before myself. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to live in a world where adults do hard things on behalf of children, because the only alternative is for children to do hard things on behalf of adults. And why are we in this mess today as a country where we have so many kids who are failing to launch and failing to thrive? It is because we have said for far too long, the kids are going to sacrifice for me. And that needs to end. That needs to end. And a lot of it has to begin at this foundational level of right to life and right to their mother and father.
One other thing that sort of has been interesting in watching some of your writing and commenting is what's been going on in this world of baby selling.
Yes, sir.
California, I know that you just weighed in on this issue in Massachusetts. There's a story in the Federalist. Massachusetts bill would allow women to sell their unborn children. Can you explain what's going on here?
Yes. Surrogacy always victimizes children. Just to explain exactly what that means, surrogacy allows you to splice what should be one woman, mother, into three purchasable and optional women: the genetic mother who contributes the egg, the birth mother that forms the bond with the baby for 9.5 months, and the social mother, the female presence in the child's life every day, loving them and distinctly building in the benefits that female parenting does, distinct from male parenting. Surrogacy allows you to say, which one of these women do you want? Which one are optional? Which one do you want to purchase, rent out, or which one do you not need at all? So surrogacy always victimizes children. It always forces children to lose at least a relationship with their birth mother, if not their genetic mother, and sometimes they go home to a motherless home completely. I am one of the founding members, the original signatories to an effort to ban surrogacy globally called the Casablanca Declaration. It is always victimizing of children. Very, very often, these are commercial arrangements that allow you to directly pay the genetic mother and the birth mother to hand over their parental rights to the child. When I was the assistant director at the largest Chinese adoption agency in the world, we called that trafficking. In adoption, you are not allowed to have money go from intended parents to genetic or birth parents, and that is what surrogacy is built on. So yes, there's a lot of baby selling happening in the name of family building under the guise of commercial surrogacy today.
Okay, but my understanding is there's also a distinction between, let's say, a couple that says we want to put our fertilized egg in a surrogate, and a woman who is having a baby that would normally give it up for adoption or could give it up for adoption and selling that baby. Is that what's going on to some degree?
So what you described in the first scenario is husband and wife created their own genetic embryo, and they are outsourcing the pregnancy to somebody who is either paid or unpaid, right? And I think for those of us on the right, our conception of surrogacy is a woman helping her infertile sister have a baby, right?
Right.
Now,
and that's legal. And that's legal.
It's permissible and sometimes legally enforceable, and probably has been going on for a couple decades. And we did not need commercial surrogacy laws to permit people to make those kinds of arrangements. The problem is there's not enough women that are willing to rent their wombs for free. And so we are pushing commercial surrogacy because very often women will not take on what is always a high-risk pregnancy for no money. Right? That's why they passed commercial surrogacy in New York, because Some poor men had to go all the way to California to rent a woman because they couldn't rent a New York woman. So that's the problem, is this actually is not a benevolent nonprofit. This is a for-profit industry. So in that scenario where you've got the husband and wife gestating the child in the sister or sister-in-law, the child still pays the price. The child still loses the bond with the only person they know the day that they are born. And we have stories and research of adoptees saying that constituted a primal wound for me. Many of these kids who are separated from their birth mother struggle disproportionately with attachment problems, externalizing disorders, struggles to bond in the future. Olivia Morrill, who is a woman born of surrogacy, talks about this, how she had massive abandonment fears, even though she was raised by a man and woman in a highly wealthy household. That what we see is that birth mother bond serves as the foundation for trust and attachment. Sometimes children
But
do not
wait.
get
There's
it.
a difference. Isn't there a difference? I'm still trying to break this apart here.
Yeah.
Is there a difference? I mean, you mentioned that you were affiliated with an adoption agency.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference? I mean, there's clearly a difference between two parents who use a genetically fertilized egg and have a surrogate, and then someone who adopts a child. Is that, I mean, I'm trying to make sure I keep these streams separate if they are.
Great question. In both of these scenarios, the child has experienced loss. Okay, that's what's similar. In adoption, the adults who are raising the child are seeking to mend the loss. In big fertility, the adults raising the children inflicted the loss. That's the difference. The difference is in adoption, adults are doing hard things on behalf of children. And with big fertility, children are doing hard things on behalf of adults. How hard is it? We are still working on it because big fertility does not have any requirements for tracking or sharing or even identifying where these children are going after they are acquired by their intended parents. These children often cross borders. They are not known to social workers. We don't actually know. It's hard for us to measure how they are doing because unlike adoption, the intended parents simply need to cut a check. They don't need to go through any background checks. So unfortunately, it will be a while before we really are able to get some numbers on the impact that surrogacy has had on children in terms of the loss of their birth mother and very often the loss of their genetic mother as well. But what we know is that adoptees have been raised by parents who overwhelmingly are better educated, wealthier, and spend more time with them. And they still struggle more than their peers who were raised by their own married biological mother and father.
So this bill in Massachusetts, though, the parentage equality bill, seeks to redefine parenthood. How?
That is a form of the Uniform Parentage Act, which is going to be coming to a state near you. One of the hallmarks of that act is gender neutralizing everything. But the other major change that this Uniform Parentage Act and all of its iterations implements is we used to recognize parenthood as based on a biological connection or an adoption. Those are the only two legitimate paths to parenthood. Biological connection, because biological parents are statistically the safest, most connected to, most invested in, and most protective of kids. And adoption, which seeks to ensure that the child has that level of protection and commitment from the parents through extensive vetting and screening. The Uniform Parentage Act, and also this bill in Massachusetts, says actually, if you intend to parent the child, you can get the baby. No screening, no background checks, no necessary connection through biology. It simply is, if you have the money to put together sperm, egg, and womb, you can walk out of the hospital with a child who's not genetically related to you. Maybe you're a felon, maybe you're a pedophile, doesn't matter to us. You intend to parent the child. So the first way that it redefines parenthood is simply by changing the factors on who can become a parent. But this also introduces commercial surrogacy, not just normal commercial surrogacy, but this bill actually overreaches even what has largely been regarded as industry standards, even though there is no standard. So this bill allows you to, for example, create a surrogacy contract after the pregnancy has been initiated. Typically, that is the line that even big fertility won't cross. They will say, it can be a legitimate surrogacy as long as you sign the contract before the pregnancy begins. This Massachusetts bill allows you to say, actually, it's a legitimate surrogacy even after the pregnancy has been initiated. Now, we've had people prosecuted for baby selling by doing exactly that.
So this changes and I'm just trying to make sure I understand the dynamic here. So before a woman gets pregnant and says, I don't want to keep this child, so I'm going to put it up for adoption. If I'm hearing you correctly, she could now say, I want to engage in surrogacy with that same baby that's inside of me, and I go to person X and person Y and sell the baby, right?
Very likely. Very likely. It's hard to know exactly what scenario that would be allowed, but yes. I think that she would have to, if we're reading the language right, create that pregnancy. If she's going to create the contract after the pregnancy, she would have to go through a fertility clinic. But if she is an approved surrogate, she could go acquire sperm from a sperm donor catalog, make the baby, and then 3 months in go, hey, I got a kid here. Anybody want it? Yes, I will sell it to you for X number of dollars. I mean, it's categorically baby selling. She can even do that with her own genetic child. It doesn't have to be somebody else's egg. She can be the birth mother. She can be the genetic mother and still say $30,000. And it's no longer baby selling. It's now family building. Of course, there is no difference to the child. The child still loses a relationship with their mother. The child still deals with all the attachment struggles that go along with that primal wound of being separated from their birth mother. And it's just evidence that this industry, there's no standards whatsoever. It is simply about the bottom line and making as much money as possible off of these designer and often disposable children.
Before we go, I want to turn the page. Yesterday, the Surgeon General came out and really expressed concern about social media and kids and basically said, we've outlawed smoking and alcohol and all this other stuff, and we've got to now consider it. You've written extensively on kids and wokeness and raising kids. Like, what do you think to the parent that's out there and says, it's easy to say, but my kid goes off to school and they're surrounded by kids that are on social media making videos. It's easy to say, don't give them this or don't give in. But the reality of life today is that if I don't do this, they're going to be ostracized. Or what do you say to them?
So much to say, Sean. There's so much to say. My co-author, Stacey Manning, and I wrote our second book, Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City, about exactly how to do this. You have to balance sheltering and exposure. You have to be the expert for your child. You have to find your people so that your kid is not alone, especially if they're going to public school, especially if they're in a liberal place. There are so many tactics that you need to take when it comes to how to, when to, if you introduce a smartphone into your child's world, if you allow them on social media. Personally, what I say is you need to do with that question what you do with everything else, which is training. You hammer the training, right? You don't just hand your kid a cell phone. You train them how to use a cell phone. And we spend an entire chapter talking about how do you train your kids? And it is simply a slow handoff, whether you're teaching them to fold laundry, teaching them to use a phone, or teaching them to defend their entire worldview. They have to watch you do it. They have to help you do it. Then you have to help them do it. And then you get to watch them do it. But that is a years-long training process.
Wow. Okay. So you don't just hand them the phone and say, good luck. You
do not.
Okay. Katie, I really appreciate you sharing this with us. Like I said, this article in the Federalist really caught my eye. I think it's something that's below the radar. And obviously this whole issue of abortion, Roe v. Wade, IVF is going to be central in the campaign. And I think it's helpful that we understand where things are and where they're going.
Yep. I really appreciate you having me on. I understand this is a difficult, emotionally fraught issue for so many people. It intersects with so many of the things that we care most about. The challenge for us is saying, who is the real victim here? It's not adults who don't get what they want. It's children whose rights are violated. And that's where we need to plant our feet, even if it's politically unpopular.
Yeah. All right, Katie, I appreciate you joining us. Guys, I want to know what you think about what we just talked about, where you come down on this issue. As I said, it's going to be huge in this election. I want to know what you think. If you're on YouTube or Rumble, go to the comments section. Tell me what you think. I want to read through the comments. We'll talk about it maybe on the next live or what have you. If you're watching this on the first, you know, you can always go to SeanSpicer.com, shoot me a note there. But I kind of want to get your feedback. Do you agree? Do you think this is an issue? How are Republicans handling this as we head into the election? Your feedback is important as we go forward. Please continue to subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Heart, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Watch us every night on the first on DirecTV, channel 347. Please continue to do this. We got a huge week ahead. And as I said, a big, big announcement coming up on Friday. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.